All right, welcome everyone. This is the first meeting of the policy group for our ambulance study that was requested. How did we get here? Mountaintop supervisors came to us. They're having multiple issues in staffing and those sort of things with all their ambulances and how they operate. And they asked us to do similar to what we did back in 2016, 2017, to look into a better mousetrap and how we can handle EMS in the county. The last time we did this type of a study, absolutely nothing came out of it. It was left up to towns to decide what they wanted to do. And the overall decision was to leave things as they were. Here we are again. My feeling this time around, what we can't do is nothing. I think we need to come together, find some solutions out there. We may wind up doing some things a little differently. That's how this should go. But I think that together and collectively, we can come up with a better plan than just winging it and hoping for the best. I think it involves everybody in the county. I don't think there's anybody that's immune to any of the issues that they're having. So it's why we put this policy group together, to bring everybody in the same room who performs EMS, who provides the services across the county. Try and get some feedback that maybe some other places in the county don't realize. So I'd like everybody to listen to what's going on. I want to make sure everybody understands what's going on. And I expect this will take 6 or 7 months to get everybody together a bunch of times. Sean has a binder that they've made up. It's got a copy of the proposed the consultant's report with any proposals. That'll be discussed. I can't stress enough how important it is that everybody has read through this report. And by the time you leave here, you understand what that report says. There's a lot in it. And there's a lot that may not necessarily have anything to do with your specific task, but that it serves a purpose in the overall system. So let's get this committee rolling. I'm going to turn the floor over to Sean for a minute. He's going to explain what's in your binders and why you have them. So let's roll.
All righty. Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, Sean Greene, County Administrators. Housekeeping. Please, silent phones, vibrate phones. Everybody has gotten a binder right now. Everything is the same in the binders. But I want to make sure you understand the kind of the background on the design. It's meant for you to have all the information pertinent, whether it's delivered tonight or delivered over the next number of meetings that we may have. We are being scribed tonight, and you'll see microphones around. That's also being recorded. We are Zooming as well. However, acknowledged, this is a terrible room to Zoom in. Just doesn't work really well for Zooming, but we do have it up, and we will have it up in the future. It will not be open for people to chime in, but they can chat in questions. I don't want it to break down into chaos by somebody getting on board and being an idiot and making comments that are unappreciated. Arbitrarily, there are 6 dates for future meetings. We just picked these out of the hat somewhat because this room is available. Doesn't mean they can't be changed. I think the point being that any recommendations to be considered weren't going to be hammered out in 1 or 2 sessions, that we really need to go through this in detail And if we need to add more meetings on this, then that's fine as well. But also for your commitment to bring this binder back every time, commit to the meeting schedule as best you can. And then if we need to make up additional binders, if you want a binder for future, just see us after the session, we'll make one up so that, again, you'll have all the pieces to the puzzle as this thing moves along. The membership is also listed in here. And then there's also going to be a meeting minutes will be added here. So after every session, there's also a checklist basically of attendance. So we know who has come and who has not. That's not meant to be insulting. That's just meant to say that we're seeking your commitment to these sessions. With that, as a brief introduction, I would also say that the report includes a hard copy of the Fitch report. There's a secondary report from the state DiNapoli, Controller DiNapoli. And then there's also a costing spreadsheet here. And I just want to caution. First of all, it's very hard to read. I know it is. There's a ton of information on it. What it was designed to do was take the options and to try to cost out the impact of the options. So there's basically two analyses per option. One is, what does the current cost of operations today equal? Everything from town tax levels, the county's commitment, your contracts with each other. It certainly is not a complete, I don't believe, outline of every individual cost. We don't get into asset values of equipment and vehicles and facilities. If we get that far, and I hope we do, that evaluation will come down later. But it's meant to show you what the current system costs you, each town, by a single family home. Then the second evaluation is the assumption that if we pick one of the options, the costs that are currently being expended would go away, but to be replaced by a different cost center. And again, it's broken down by what the value would be per town and per single family home. That is really the background that we've put together so far. We are not using any kind of a Bible. We're not using any kind of what did some other county do, some other state. We've just tried to, when possible, use the KIPP principle if appropriate. And we can go from there. So that's the opening remarks at this point. Then what I'd like to do, and I would ask you to speak up from the standpoint of volume. If you would go around the room, introduce yourself and whom you represent, and I'll start with Supervisor Haynes.
Rick is Saki. We have an ambulance service that is run by the town, and we average between 90 and 100 calls a month. We have 3 rigs. We have a new one on order.
Oh, you guys skip. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
Paul Macko from the town of Greenville. I'm the former 14-year town supervisor, and I'm in the town board right now. We have a contract with Greenville Rescue Squad, and it's probably the most expensive tax base or tax rate for Rescue Squad in the county. They're not town employees. They're not part of the New York State retirement system. We have a full-fledged contract.
Don Benson.
Speak up, please.
Don Benson, current supervisor, town of Greenville.
Thank you.
Patrick McCullough, supervisor, town of Catskill.
Rich Tompkins, supervisor, town of Ashland.
Floyd, supervisor, town of Wyndham.
Sean Mahoney, supervisor, town of Hunter.
Greg Ross, supervisor, town of Prescott.
Jim Thornton, Green County Legislator.
Ed Bloomer, Greene County legislator, Athens, who not Jacksonville, Catskill.
Tommy Hobart, Greene County legislator, District 2 of Saki.
Harry Lennon Carroll, Greene County legislator.
Matt Lavera, Greene County legislator, majority leader representing Catskill.
Like Martinez, Coxsackie District. of Greene County Legislature.
I can't go for the legislator to.
Rick Davis, legislator, I represent Greenville, and actually, we have the second highest tax to our homeowners. And we are the second largest, but the tax portion that the taxpayers pay. The only one that's bigger is Catskill. We have a whole lot bigger ambulance line.
Mike Fuelich, Greene County Legislator representing Catskill.
Greene County Legislative, Catskill.
Very true. Green County Legislator representing Carroll.
Carol Legg, District 7, District 7, Greene County Legislator representing Alcott, Hunter, Lexington.
Happens.
Michael Menudo, candidate for Greene County Legislator representing Catskill.
John Hoteling, Greene County EMS Coordinator.
John Farrell, Greene County Emergency Services.
Michael Ryan, reporter extraordinaire.
AKA Poison. Telling yourself that. Greene Board Director, Real Property Tax Services in Greene County. Pete Kuzminski, Greene County Sheriff.
Okay, Dan, start the back wall, please.
Dan King, Greene County.
Deb,
Deborah Biggins, Deputy Supervisor, Carol.
So that's it, County Councilman.
Patty McKinney, Deputy EMS.
Steve here.
Nadine Meredith, Chief of County. Vivian Montai, Administrator.
speak up, please.
Vivian Montai, Administrator.
Thank you.
Shane, Administrator, Carol.
Jeff Russo, Town Supervisor, we both want.
Joe Kelleher, Emergency Services.
Jeff,
Yep, Emergency Services.
okay, thank you. Now, our three consultants, two are here. One unfortunately is about to hit or introduce himself to Milton, I guess, in Florida. So he is on Zoom. So Todd Sheridan is on Zoom. And then I'll introduce now Tom Little on the left here from Fitch and Chad Primo also. Those guys can come up now and they can give an outline, if you will, of the report. I know by now everybody has read the report, so we shouldn't have to go into too much detail. But as they go through things, please ask the question as it comes up. I don't want to wait until the end because we might forget. We might have 10 more questions. So please go along with it as best you can. And then we'll do a Q&A. At the end, though, we'll need to confirm, can everybody meet this schedule? Do we need to amend the schedule? I think it's important to lock down these dates and your ability to maintain these sessions. With that, Chad and Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Just because Jim DePerna thinks he got off lucky with not having to introduce himself, can you just do this?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the back row here. My apologies. Jim, George.
Jim DePerna, Greene County Emergency Services, 911 Director.
George Jim, Chief, Town of Catskill.
Travis Whitback, we're being rescued.
Thank you.
All right. Quicker, yeah.
Okay. You have to click it?
Yep.
As Sean said, my name is Chad Primo. I'm one of the senior associates with Fitch. Todd Sheridan, the junior partner that was in charge of this project, he is on hurricane watch, but so far so good. It sounds like you still got power and internet, so.
We got power and internet, so
Right.
we're doing good, and I'm watching the canal right now, and it seems to be holding its own.
So this is one day we can all be glad we're not in Florida, so. We put together a brief, well, I'll say brief, it's 29 slides. I'm probably gonna cruise through the first 6 or 7 because they're background about Greene County. I'm pretty sure you all know about Greene County, so we don't really have to belabor that.
Chad, would you do a little background on each of you?
Sure. I've been with the firm now for 3 years. Prior to that, I was a paramedic for 30 years in Ohio, and I ran a fairly large Catholic-based healthcare ground and air transportation system. We did anywhere between, well, we did about 40,000 transports a year. We have 5 helicopters. My partner in crime here is Tom. Tom, you want to give yourself?
Sure. My name's Tom Little. I've been a paramedic since 1973, licensed in Kansas, Missouri, and National Registry. I've also been a certified emergency manager in the state of Missouri. I've owned an ambulance service in Topeka, Kansas, operated that for about 10 years. I used to sell ambulances, Portons, and AEVs. And I eventually sold my business to AMR. I've been consulting with Fitch and Associates since 2005. I'm one of their more tenured employees. And what I do with that firm is I actually go out, besides doing assessments like we've done here, I go out and I run systems. While we implement things that we make recommendations on, sometimes our clients say, well, that all sounds good. Why don't you just come down and run it? And so that's what I do. I've done that for a half dozen organizations over the years and got them up and running, and senior leadership recruited and turned it back over to them.
Please note he's from Missouri, not Missouri. I fell into that trap early on.
Yeah, in addition to doing these types of studies, I also have the privilege of implementing different projects too, like Tom's. So you got a couple old operators here. So anyways, that's who we are. I got like I said, a brief presentation that kind of summarizes the report that you all have hopefully read. As Sean said, if a question hits your brain, please stop me and we can hash it out then. You know, you don't have to save your questions till later. I'm not that fancy. So, all right, so let's get rolling. So we were hired back in 2023 to do the study. We appreciate that. And just as a quick remark, I'll say your hospitality has been great. Nobody ever told us, no, we're not going to help you. You know, y'all did what you could do to get us the information. And for Neil especially, you put a lot of time in and a lot of work into getting us the CAD data. So I just would like to point that out to Neil wherever
he's in the back right there.
Yeah, I know he spent a lot of hours doing that, so we appreciate that. So, and we appreciate everybody's help with the study. So we were hired back in December 2023. The objective was to develop sustainable EMS options for the county. So, and I think we did a pretty good job with that. Again, these are just options for you all to look at and to kick around and ask questions about. So the key deliverables was an EMS system review with the recommendations. Here's the key findings. They're outlined in the report too. There's a lack of performance metrics countywide. Every agency has their own metrics and every agency is measuring certain things. The geography and seasonality is definitely a challenge here. We heard that everywhere we went, especially around ski season. And then the summertime when y'all have the hikers and stuff. So that's definitely an issue for your EMS system, and it can pull resources and deplete areas depending on the situation, especially up to the ski resorts. We heard that a lot. So the agencies are siloed to a certain degree. Everybody has their own policies, their own people, but y'all share people and you all share communications. So it's basically a CON based system in New York. So there is a need for regionalized services to try to get your arms around that. We feel like there's a lack of safety culture. There's a lot of employees working a lot of hours here. They go from one agency to another, putting in a lot of time to make sure the system's covered. And unfortunately, safety can take a backseat to that at times. So, and then dispatch services. The dispatch services are really nice here. They just need a little bit of expansion. There's still some 911 calls going to secondary PSAP, which then get triaged and transferred over in Catskill. So ideally, you'd want all the medical 911 calls to come in directly here. Here's the methodology. I'll let y'all read through that. It's pretty boring stuff. More methodology. the evaluation, this is what I said, y'all know a lot about Greene County and currently what's going on in the system. The big takeaway here is the state of New York still does have the CON process in place where each agency basically has a home rule, right? So you get a CON, each town does, or each agency does, and it allows them to operate. And it's a homeroom, it's based around the homeroom principle. Those are the agencies in the county. That's where you're at. It's all background stuff. Here's the demand for service we ran based off Neil's numbers. So this shows us that there's some increase in the volume that's been going on. So in the report, we assumed about a 2% increase year over year in growth because you all are growing as a community, which not all communities are. In 2019, you have 14.6 transports a day. 2023, you have 14.7. So it's not huge growth in EMS numbers, but it is slight growth. And this, when we look at calls, we like to do a lot of temporal analysis on them. So when do they happen during the day? What time of day? What time of month? What time of week? And that's what these graphs show. Like a lot of 911 services, I mean, the month and day are fairly steady, but you'll see that peak probably around that ski season. And during the summertime, you'll see some peaks there. And then obviously hour day, that is a pretty standard for most transportation agencies because, you know, the humans get up at about 8 and then we go to bed at about 11 and stop causing problems. So that's mainly when most of the runs take place. This is what we call a heat map. So the blue areas are the cold areas, but they represent areas in the county that has seen more than one call, EMS call. And then the green and the red areas are the hot spots, and those show where most of the calls occur. So as you can see, the main hot spots are down by the river, which we would expect, right? So that's where most of the calls are happening. But you still get calls up in the mountains, obviously, and other areas. Response times. So when we look at response times, we look at total response time. Oops, sorry. Which starts at the time of dispatch. And we call it hello time, basically. So the time from the dispatcher says hello to the time when the paramedic is on scene saying hello to the patient. That's the total response time we look at. So we took Neil's data and we crunched it down. And here's the standards we like to use for response times. This is the CFAI standards.
What is that?
I'm sorry?
What is CFAI?
The Commission of Fire Accreditation International. So this is their 9th edition standards. And what we like to look at is the second unit. The second unit on this graph is when the ambulance is marked. The first unit is the first responders. So we look at your community makeup, and it's a rural community. So the baseline standard for the ambulance that we like to see is 18 minutes and 12 seconds for response time, for that hello to hello time. The benchmark is, what's that say, 14 minutes. So that's like if you're doing great, that's the benchmark, 14 minutes, right? So that's the standard we backed into when we developed the options when we're looking at them. So from the data we got, here's the averages for the agencies that from the data set we pulled. And the county average was 13.24 minutes for response times. Now that's the average. We don't like to measure systems in averages though. We don't like to measure anything medical in averages because that means you can screw up half the time. We like to measure things to the 90th percentile, which means 9 out of 10 times you met this standard, right? It helps to measure predictability, would be the best way to put it. So when we measure the system on predictability at the 90th percentile, you're just shy of 21 minutes. So 9 out of 10 calls countywide, an ambulance is getting there in 21 minutes. Or an agency is getting there in 21
Can I
minutes.
ask you a question?
Go ahead, Daryl.
Yes, please.
So our book is not in concurrent with the slides. I mean, for us to follow this is really kind of hard. Page 23.
Yeah, this is a summary of the report.
Right.
I mean, it's,
Of course.
It's not exactly as it is there, but it's the same information. I agree.
Sure. And if I'm going too fast, I can slow down. I just want to leave.
now you're going too fast.
Okay.
Just confused there. Okay,
I live my
gotcha.
life that way.
Just the same but different.
Because I can be confused, highly confused at times too. So if it's me, let me know and I'll adjust. So the 90th percentile, that's what we try to measure the systems to for predictability. Okay, and that's what we build systems to, is to the 90th percentile. Does anybody have questions on the 90th percentile? Because sometimes people don't understand this point, because a lot of systems do it in averages, and this is a little different. So I want to make sure everybody is good with that. All right. Okay. So
What was the count though?
the what?
The count on the last screen. So the count was how many times you hit the 9 out of 10, 90th percentile out
Right,
of the overall cost?
right. So for the county, there was, geez, my eyes are getting bad, 7,628. So 9 out of 10 times, an agency was there in 20 minutes and 59 seconds. That makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Good question. So this is a new slide we'll make sure is put in your binder. It's not in the report. We ran this a few weeks back, understanding that there could be some questions around the geography and the response times, especially as it relates to some of the options we put forward for consideration. So we broke the response times into the 3 districts, I guess I'll call them, or geographic areas: the mountain, the river, and the valley. Which we heard all about the mountain and the river and the valley when we were out doing our site visits. It was very enlightening. So the average is that top line for each district. The 90th percentile is that second line. So you can see where, like, for the valley, from on scene to dispatch is 16 minutes and 38 seconds. And from on scene to en route is 16 minutes and 31 seconds. So the 90th percentile that we're recommending when we do the system design based off those accreditation standards is 15 minutes for the mountain and the valley, 10 minutes for the river. Because there's more people in the river and you have more resources down there. So a 10-minute response time would be doable. So this is a difference between what the options and the design we did and what currently the 90th percentile is measuring according to the data set we pulled from Neil. So.
Question for you.
Yes.
So the 90 percentile. As far as like what you're saying, as far as accreditation, do we possess the resources to meet this with what we have now, with hypothetical where it was all put together?
In the options we are presenting to you, this is what we've designed the system to meet.
That with the
90th percentile.
people we have on hand at this time.
Well, that's a great question. That was one of the.
Good question.
So overall, and I think, it was a great report, amazing. But one thing that I felt like it was missing was sort of a count, an actual count of the people that we have, because as you said, we have people that are working in multiple agencies.
Right.
So if we counted up all of the people across all of the agencies, and they stop working the hours that they're working, do we have enough people to operate the system?
Right. So when we asked that question, we were told that that data was being gathered, but it was never completely gathered. So that was a data point we couldn't give for the report.
One thing, give or take countywide without duplicates, we're currently running, if you took everybody's second jobs away and counted everybody as a single job, you're looking at 50 paramedics and 76 EMTs currently that are working on a regular basis, whether it be part-time or full.
How many would it take to run the system the way you have it laid out right now?
I would have to take a look at that, and I don't know right off the top of my head. I'd have to sit down and hash that out. And I don't want to give you a wrong number, so. But Sean didn't have that information when we were here, so.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah, he was crunching it for us, but.
And Chad, can I jump in to answer that just a little bit differently?
Yeah,
So
totally.
part of this,
Todd's on Zoom.
that's okay. So part of this is also going to be helping with system design. So you as a policy committee, this is a data element for you all to take a deeper dive in. So this is really for us, really to give you the high level of what you would be striving for, depending on what the system design that you want to come up with. So in essence, if you want to put 8 units, 10 units, whatever that is, then you can start designing from that. Am I best in a 24-hour shift because maybe workload's accounted for in a low workload, or am I working 12-hour shifts? How many FTs? Those are part of the policy side. We've designed it around a unit hour cost, and you'll see some of the financials as we begin to move that forward through this. But this is to help set up for the policy group for you all to be able to make those strategic decisions from these data elements provided.
So we were just presented a month or so ago with the advanced data from a year or so ago, that the average response time in the valley was, let's say, roughly 8 minutes, and in the mountaintop, 16. And since the addition of the additional fly car on the mountaintop, it went from 16 to 8. So you're telling me here on all this information that, I mean, your response times are higher than what we were presented.
That was only Greene EMS, Daryl.
What's that?
That was only Greene EMS. That report that we got was only Greene EMS.
Oh, okay, so that's not the ambulance.
Not ambulance.
You gotta be careful with some of this data, because like we pulled a data set from Neil and the CAD. So each agency also keeps its own data set. That goes back to that lack of common metrics, right? So, and they'll keep it, some will keep it in their charting system, some will keep it other ways. So we, as a group, decided the source of truth was the CAD. So if you pull data outside of that, we would have to, you would have to try to validate it and compare apples to apples, and that could be tough.
So this doesn't include paramedics, it's just ambulance service alone.
We do have the paramedics in there as their own thing.
Does Fitch have the ability to look across the United States and have a comparison county to Greene County? And I'm talking about population. How many would be an American standard in employees needed to handle 48,000 customers?
So comparable.
Yes, so I'll jump in on that one, Chad. So
yeah,
so have been part of this here is you're talking about, it's not always just about the population design. One of the parts that you'll see as Chad starts going forward is what we design system at is a 3-part approach. One is understanding the performance standard that you want to get, which will be geography. And Chad will show this here in a little bit, but it'll be talking about your locality specific. Some areas can afford a really quick response time in a rural community. They can build stations. They have the funds to be able to do that. Some people aren't. Say like Wayne County, New York, which is a very comparable county to you all. They're building a safety net program where they're doing 15-minute response times up there with stations. But the one part is looking at what is the dedicated response time that you all want as a community and understanding how many geographic units that takes to cover that to a said standard. The third part is understanding the demand. What is going on in your community? You can look at like populations, but the challenge point is populations are different age demographics. They've got younger, older. There's some people are more self-pay and unemployed versus employed blue collar or white collar areas. So you have just different demographics. So when we look at historical volume, the last piece, which really affects you all quite a bit, is your overall total time on task. You don't have a hospital in your community. So every response that you all do, you're going outside of your community. Let's say like Columbia County, which is right next door to you. They at least have one right in the corner of their county where they can come to and from to be able to be within their county after they transport. You all are not so lucky as your setup. So every community, even though you can look at comparable, they all have their own design elements. We've broke those down into being specific for each community in those three parts: geographic specific, the total demand that you all have in your community, and the time on task it takes to run each call. That helps as we start working through a system design to help really make that local, or that really a local decision, or the ability for you all to make a local decision with that.
I would also add too, another unique aspect is just the geography of the county. It plays a role here that a lot of counties, that's not the case, right? So on top of all that stuff Todd was talking about, you guys also have geography. You know, you got mountains, you got valley, you got the river, and it's that plays a role. And we took that, we looked at that too when we built out the different system options. Uh-oh. My screen's gone.
No, I got it back.
Man, throw me off there. If I'm waiting for the hook to pull me out, all of a sudden, okay. Oh. There we go. Okay, so to get a little bit into the finances, so our objective was to review the system and to assess the sustainability and also the taxpayer impact. Sean and Ray did all the taxpayer work, which was great. We appreciate that. The data sources, we got the financial data from the agencies, and everybody had a varying degree of available finances. And some we just had to pull off the 990s, which is never great, but we took what we could get, and then we tried to amalgamate it together. We did have to make some assumptions on some things, which I'll talk about here. Revenue collections. We did use what we experience in similar rural communities when it comes to revenue collections. So we're able to do that. The service level mix, we use the fly car responses, the MPDS service volumes that we got from Neil to help predict the service levels. The average
MPDS means?
Medical Dispatch Priority System.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sorry, talking my lingo. The average mileage we got from the heat maps and the densities into where your destination hospitals were. The payer mix we calculated from the agency data that we could get, and also from our experience in other rural communities in New York. Medicare and Medicaid fee schedule obviously are published. The performance data we got from a few agencies. And then we use a recommended charge master at 300% Medicare rates, which is pretty standard. Let's see. I think I covered all that. So at the end of the day, we projected the revenue per 911 transport was around $665. That's consistent with some of the other similar rural service net revenue rates we see. Each agency handles billing independently. And obviously moving forward, we would recommend trying to pull that all together to one single provider. That way you can get some economies of scale there and really start to get some metrics on payer data and other financial data. The system subsidies, obviously the municipalities directly subsidize most of the services. The county also offers significant subsidies in the form of the fly car service, the dispatch services, some EMT scholarships, and an EMS coordinator, John over here.
Hey, Chad,
Yeah,
I'm gonna step away. I need to handle something. I'm gonna leave this running in the background, so I just wanted to let you know I have to step away.
okay, yep, no problem. That's not good when you're in a hurricane, so. So in 2023, the county paid 1.925 million for the fly cars. And in 2024, that was projected to go up to 2.182 million. And we're projecting that costs are not gonna go down anytime soon, just based off the general economy and inflation and things like that, so.
Pardon me,
Yes, sir.
I hate to interrupt.
Oh, you're fine.
I haven't been a town supervisor for over 3 years. And that
65?
yeah. 3 years ago was over $1,100 per town hard. How can that be half?
This would be a countywide average. So you could have a high payer mix in one specific area of the county based on insurance levels
For
and
us to
things.
be twice as much as everybody else, that must mean that
That would be really high.
the rest of them are doing it for $400.
Was that your revenue or was that your bill?
Yeah. That would be really high in my experience.
That's what it costs us to roll.
No, this is the revenue you bring in.
That's revenue. Bring in. You're in the bag for $400 and some every time.
Yeah, if that's what you're rolling per run, then you're losing about 400, 500 bucks. Because the 665 is what we're projecting your net revenue per transport is. Not your gross, not your cost,
Not the cost, but.
the revenue, the money you're pulling in. All right, gonna say, if it's 1,100 bucks, two things are going on. You got a great community or something's not right with your billing. So if you're pulling in that kind of money, so. All right, where is that? I think we got it. So the future cost monitoring, we would recommend some specific financial metrics start to be tracked by the agencies and submitted to the county, just so you all can have better idea of what's really going on in the system, right? I mean, data is power, and this is where agencies can get a little squirrely around showing their numbers and stuff. But at the end of the day, if you don't, then we're guessing. So it's better to pool the data so you know what's going on in the system.
At the end of the day, it's all being paid by taxpayers.
Right.
And we owe them the answers they're looking for.
Right, exactly, so. All right, so this is probably the section that will generate the most questions, so I wanted to leave the most time for it. So this is the pathway forward. So these are the options or the recommendations we developed for the county to consider. We're not saying you should do this one or that one. What we're saying is, from our perspective, here are the available options that we think you should consider. And there's some advantages to each option, right? So, and this group, it sounds like it's going to be tasked with figuring out which of these options you like, or maybe something completely different. So, option 0, the status quo. That is always an option, and that's the option you all took when in 2016, right? You decided we'll stick with the status quo and we'll let fair markets do what fair markets do, and we'll see how the chips fall. So you can always do that. We wouldn't really recommend that, but we got it listed as an option, right? Not what I would do, but you can do it. So if you do decide to go with the status quo, though, there is some low-hanging fruit here that you probably really should consider. One is creating a purchasing consortium for medical supplies, vehicles, standardizing the vehicles and stuff. You know, if y'all can land on some of that, you probably save some money. Ensure all the unit status changes with 911 dispatch are documented 100% of the time. That way dispatch knows where everybody's at all the time. That will help response times, making sure the right unit is tagged for the right response. Because they do a nice job moving the units and doing some system status management for you under policy there. So helping them out is good. And expand the medical first response if you can for echo unit calls, right? Those high level calls. If you can get first responders to say, yes, we're going to roll on those and try to set some metrics to hold them to, that would be good too. And that's all low hanging fruit. And obviously you'd want to continue funding the fly cars if we're going with the status quo. So
You're purchasing consortium.
Yeah.
Because of the makeup that our agencies have, the various, whether it's an independent agency, a not-for-profit, a municipal agency, the county could put out a bid spec that we could make available to other municipalities. It wouldn't necessarily be available to independent agencies. That's.
Yeah, that might be a legal issue. We do that with the gasoline.
Just because of New York State.
For soil and water, we provide the gasoline for distribution, so it's.
It would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we get too much of it, because we all buy the same bandages and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but you're all buying them 10 different ways.
Yeah, and for the private organization, that may be an issue. But for the municipal organizations, you probably. Any questions on option 0?
Chad,
Yes, sir.
I think it's important to point out that status quo is not necessarily status quo.
Right.
We heard from a number of agencies that they're not sustainable. If you stick with the status quo, you may lose several more ambulance services before we get through another year.
It's true.
And does that mean adding all of our units to the CAD system? That future all status changes will not allow?
Yeah. Yeah. We would definitely recommend you do that. Option 1, stronger system coordination. So in addition to those options we just talked about, this would cost a little bit of money, but establish dispatch agreements with all the EMS agencies with the county dispatch service that would allow them to provide real-time AVL data and optimize response. So basically, all the ambulances have GPS in them. We know where they're at. We know what the closest unit is. We have dispatch agreements in place to send the closest unit.
So would that be like the mobile CAD system in every unit?
Yeah. Again, a little bit of money. I mean, you can get sophisticated to a mobile CAD system, or you can just have a GPS that's tracked by the CAD. So there's a lot of different options out there.
Which on that, the county's end has already invested on the infrastructure on that, so it's all just hardware.
Just the unit cost.
Yeah,
just for the.
So that would be the way to go then. That would be.
As far as monitoring for the.
And I'll also add, some of these systems have dash cam videos on board and some other safety things that you could spec out, to help with the safety culture too. Implement a performance monitoring software. So something like First Watch, I don't know if you've all seen that, or Power BI system that basically the CAD data feeds into, and you can start to pull some real good metrics on that and see, like, everybody knows it gets busy around ski season. Well, when exactly does that happen? When should we start to staff up or staff down and things like that? So you can start to make some real system level decisions versus, Wyndham trying to figure it out and then they gotta pull you all in, or vice versa, so do some of those things.
There's a major difference that I can recognize in our last study, 2016, in comparison with this one. The amount of time that it took to pull that data together back then was better than a year, maybe a year and a half. So we're at a point now, I think everybody would agree, that we can pull this data fairly quickly now. We're collecting a lot of it. We just don't necessarily get it to the right places. I think that's a fairly easy task. That I say easy, it's it's a task that we can handle.
Yeah, I mean,
To get a better look at data.
technology's come a long way, and, you know, when my daughter can have her term paper written by GPT in 10 minutes, you know, I mean, Neil can use some of this advanced programming to really crunch this data and give you all meaningful reports. Neil's a hardworking, smart guy. If you give him the tools, I guarantee you, he's probably gonna give you some good stuff. So at least he gave us some good stuff. So we would also recommend a common EPCR platform to track clinical data. This is important when it comes to QA, QI. You know, the state of New York requires you all to submit a QA, QI plan, right, as part of your CON. And we would recommend that you start to look at it from more of a system level perspective. And the best way to do that is have a common EPCR platform. Secondary to that is to have a
Quick question on that one.
Sure.
Being under one account, because currently everybody's using the same
One account.
platform.
One account,
Okay,
Yep.
single account,
single account.
streamlined.
One
billing
common,
and everything.
yeah, one common account, one common platform, that you can start to pull data. Now, obviously, if you're independent agencies, you may have to silo that data, but most of those EPCR vendors can do that. So they can silo data, but still be able to aggregate it and pull it out for you, Sean, or the medical director, or whoever. Yes, sir.
For you, with the other states that you've worked with nationally.
I can't hear you, Tom.
Is New York overregulated as far as micromanaging or
Yes.
layers of bureaucracy
Yes.
to basically get the patients the care that they need the most?
New York has a lot of regulations, yes.
So
Now, are you beating California? No.
they're trying hard. But I mean, is there any like assessment or an opinion, you guys obviously have read through this thing,
Yeah,
in order to expedite and make it more proficient, not just for the county of Greene, but all the counties involved in the state?
well, that's an interesting question, and honestly, your county administrator is leading the charge for a lot of that through NISAC. And they should really be commended for that, because there is a lot of regulation around EMS, especially around the CON requirements and some of the other regional councils, the REMAX and things like that. So New York is a unique animal. Now, I'll tell you, every state has its own things, right? Ohio, Michigan, California, all of them have their own little quirks, okay, that you got to work through. You got to do licensing, you got to do this. We recently helped the state of Virginia work through some issues, and they're working through some of those issues. And but to answer your question in the short, yeah, there's a lot of regulations.
I was just wondering if there was anything that was mandated that's really antiquated per se, that's not applicable. Maybe it was good in 1980, but it's really irrelevant now.
Yeah. I'm gonna defer that answer.
Yes.
That could be a whole nother meeting, maybe. Or George, Chief June, you want to answer that one?
CON process.
Yeah,
Certificate of need process was designed to limit competition. And so what it does now, it also limits our ability to work collaboratively. Chad was talking about in one of those options where, you know, you have the GPS in each ambulance, send the quote physically the closest unit. Well, that unit may not have an operating certificate for the area where that call is. So that's one of the areas where the legislation regulation is a hindrance to system design or collaboration within the existing system.
right.
Needs to go away.
That's why part of that recommendation is those dispatch agreements. Because you have to have these legal agreements in place, otherwise you're violating the CON laws, which are there to protect the provider and not the patient. And that can be an issue, but you can work around it while the regulations are changed.
We do a little bit of that now.
Yeah. You
In
do.
policy to let our dispatchers do that.
And a lot of areas in New York do that. But you gotta make sure you got those agreements, those policies in place, so.
To this question, if this was operated under a single provider, would that resolve this issue with the CR?
Hold on a minute, we're getting there. That's an option. So, get back to this slide though. We would recommend that you all move towards a single medical director too. That can help, guide the medical practice as a whole. Now, y'all pretty much use the one guy, right? But it would be good to formalize that with everybody and really put that in place, so. Along with the medical director, an EMS educational committee would be good. And then, the annual financing reporting like we talked about. So when we talk about, a committee, we're talking about things to proactively do, the same training in all the departments at the same time. Whoops. Sorry. Thanks.
Typical EMS guy.
Yeah, I get waving my hands around. Oh, geez. Okay. Apparently it's my time to go, so. All right, I'll keep my hands to myself. But, the same education at the same time, same type of training, make sure everybody has their CTs. It's well coordinated under the medical director who's overseeing it all and who's usually present at those trainings. So, okay.
Can you touch base a little more on what your findings were throughout the county with vast differences on that?
Just that a lot of people were doing different things. Most people were using online tools to accomplish training, but the issue also comes down to the fact that you all share employees. So some departments are relying on other departments to do the training for this versus that, because the employees are shuffling around, if that makes sense. So it's kind of all over the place. That's why we're saying if you can really standardize that, that's probably some low hanging fruit too. So now that's easy to say. There's a lot of work in that one sentence. I'm just saying, there's a lot of work there. Option 2, the single provider with the coordinated districts. So this is where we start to talk about moving towards a single provider, be it the county, a contracted provider, but one agency that is running the entire county system. This would be where the county would manage or contract to the unified agency. And to do this, we would need those dispatch agreements with the real-time AVL, the performance monitoring software, and the fly cars would still be in service under this with the coordinated districts. So what we mean by coordinated districts is in the report, we broke down again to the 3 districts of the river, the valley, and the mountain. So each district would have its own battalion chief, supervisor, whatever you want to call them in the fly car, right? 24/7, in addition to the ambulance units. And they would run as a district there, but report up to a central management like a chief. So, and that central agency. So if you think about it, it's kind of a weird concept, but it would probably work in this area. Like flight programs tend to have outlying bases, different bases, but they all report up to the one agency model, right? To the one director. That's an example of a district model. So any questions on what I'm talking about there? Trying to explain it, Okay.
One governing board,
One governing board,
but multiple districts that are silos.
right, but they're still part of the same agency. So they're still that one agency.
So would it be more broken just on the funding
No,
side of it?
it's more,
or
it's an
the entire operation?
It's an operational district. is what it is. It's one agency with 3 operational districts.
And it could be however many districts you.
Yeah,
get
but
permit.
what made sense for this county is 3. So it would put a little bit more of a local flavor into the EMS system. You know, like some places that do this will actually brand certain trucks like this district or that district. So it would be the mountain district or the river district. So sometimes in communities, what we see is they like to keep that local flavor. I'll tell you, it's more expensive because you're paying for more overhead and you're paying for more supervision. But you get a little bit more of a regional district type of management structure.
So this would not be 3 separate mini employers per se, so
No.
you wouldn't have the option to work 2 different places.
1 employer,
Okay,
3 operational districts.
More, I think, like our highway department.
okay.
Okay, one guy's in charge,
Yeah.
but he has 4 different places that he's managing. They
Yeah.
all kind of do their own thing, but they're all doing it under the auspices of one.
Right.
One.
Yeah, it's just kind of trying to segue into
Right. And there's
what the difference is with the next option.
there's still a lot of common training, there's still, you know, maybe common uniforms. You can have different district uniforms, but it's just trying to put a little bit more of that local district flavor into it. But again, it's a little bit more expensive when you start to do that.
It would all still be under a single dispatch.
Yes,
It would be under a single dispatch, so arguably it would still be countywide system, right?
yes,
And mutual aid would still occur when needed.
Oh, yeah.
District to district. Yeah, I guess that was sort of one of my questions too, is like, what really is the difference, right?
yeah, it's really adding a little bit more management structure into each district to make sure that that district gets exactly what it wants. So like if I were in the town of Wyndham, I knew if I had a problem, I would go talk to the supervisor or the battalion chief or whatever that person is for the Wyndham, for the Mountain District, right? And it just gives it a little bit more of that local type of control. Maybe not control is the right word, but. So,
Oversight.
yeah. And some areas around the country do this and they like it. Understanding though, that it does cost more money because you have a little bit more overhead.
But ideally, at times of normal call volume, you would keep the calls in that district.
Right.
Okay, I just-
You got it. You got it. So, yep. Again, there's still a countywide CON. And the one provider is working under that countywide CON. Either through the county or contracted by the county, but they have 3 districts that they're managing. That one agency is managing. So it's a little similar to what Greene Paramedics is doing now, right? They got a mountain car, they got a valley car, so a little similar. Yeah.
With that option, why would you continue with the paramedic fly car if you had systems?
That fly car really is that supervisor car.
A supervisor's car, not.
Yeah, it's a fly car. Yeah, they
It's
can
not
still.
fly car itself, the paramedic would be on the brick.
Yes, there would be the systems we designed are ALS ambulances
So
with paramedics.
clarification, maybe this slide should be changed. A supervisor's car. instead of-
Sure. The other, yeah, I can put that in there.
Yeah.
That last point, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's if you still feel you want that extra resource on the mountain, maybe. Because we heard a lot about that fly car being on the mountain. And
If your medic's trying to handle, why would you want one?
I don't think you would need to, but you could. That's what we're saying. I mean, there's nothing that limits the fly cars going away. You would continue funding them as you needed to. So if for some reason you felt that was necessary in the overall district, you could do that. But you're gonna have a fly car there, which is your supervisor or your battalion chief or whatever you call them anyways. I hear a lot of mumbling. Questions? No? Okay, all right. Option 3, so this is the single provider unified county system, so we're not gonna do districts. We're just gonna all be in the same uniform, same trucks. We'll have one supervisor on, we're not gonna have 3 on. And we're gonna report up, so this is the traditional one provider county system that everybody pictures when you think about that, right? So you gotta get a county CON, and there's a process for that. And the county can do that. It's a municipal CON, just like the towns do. This would be to offer ALS ambulance services. So the county would provide the ALS services to the municipality at no cost, allowing them to reduce their subsidies. And then, again, you gotta ensure you have the AVL tracking, the documentation, performance monitoring. And in this situation, you probably would not need county fly car service. But again, if you felt it necessary, you could, but you probably would. A key point here too is also, you want to continue to expand that medical first response when you can, right? So that helps to keep that hello to hello time down that we talked about. Here's the finances for those models. Let's see.
I think all of the departments that do first response at this point in our county are done by fire departments, which are volunteer.
Yeah, it's difficult.
No.
So, yeah.
I wanted to clarify that.
And I understand you have like a lot of fire departments still, so.
Yeah.
That's our next challenge.
So.
Next,
So. I'll tell you, we put that in there because we would be remiss not to, but again, there's a lot to that one little sentence, right? So, and we understand that, so. Let's see. So all the options require significant subsidies to meet response times. So remember, when you're designing a system, you're paying for readiness, right? So what we try to do is take those accreditation response standards and say, okay, here's the standards, here's what we'll build the system to, and now we got to cost that out. What's the readiness for that? So like Sean asked me, like, well, how do we get to a 10-minute response time for everybody? Well, it would be like 20, or it was some phenomenal amount of ambulances you would need, right? To hit that 90th percentile mark. So then you start to look at what's reasonable based off the accreditation standards. So that's what we did. Depreciation data wasn't available, like Sean said. We didn't get everybody's depreciation schedules on stations and stuff. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. You know, this is to the EBITDA. This is not to the bottom line because we're missing depreciation on all that stuff. So we have to keep that in mind. Overall, option 3 is the most cost-effective design just because it requires less overhead. It has the most coordination, but what we want. So here's the numbers. So option 0, 2024 is what we came up with for the whole county. And again, this is pretty high level. And I would not try to, you know, if you throw stones at me over parts of this, I would understand. So we had to take the data we had and crunch it out, but I think we came pretty close. So transport revenues were about 3.5 million. There were some other revenues that were documented on the 990s that I put in there. I didn't want to cheat anybody. So the total revenue we saw was, we were predicting to be about 3.85 million with a total operating expense of around 10.1. So we're estimating that the system loses about 6.345 million, not including that depreciation, that other stuff we're talking about. So option 1 pretty much holds everything at that same level, except for some added direct materials and overhead on some of those points we talked about, which wasn't too much. We figured that cost about 175,000 added cost to the system. Option 2, A and B. So A, the cheaper one, The chief will like it. You know, the more expensive one is a county run system. So what that is assuming is that the employees have county benefits. Obviously, government benefits usually run a little bit more expensive than private benefits. So 2B is if you went out to a private provider. So a nonprofit, somebody who's out in the market space, their benefit costs, we would expect to be a little bit lower. So we would expect the revenue is going to hold the same. That doesn't change. The direct labor for 2A is 10.183 million. For 2B is 9.15 million. Again, that's all benefit cost related. The materials, we costed out at about 3/4 The overhead's about $1.5 million. So your expenses are 12.4 and 11.35 for a net loss of 8.7 and 7.6 million. So you can see where that district option, that option 2, is a little bit more expensive, and it's mainly on the overhead. Option 3, the coordinated county system, we estimated would run, I'll just bottom line it for you, at 7.2 million, and then if you contracted it out to a private provider, about 6.28 million. Subsidy. And in the report, I have some really small documentation to try to read through. That's in the back of that report. So, any questions on that?
Just on the revenue side,
Yeah.
if we're to have a single system.
Yeah.
That was doing the revenue for everyone. Theoretically, wouldn't that increase your revenue?
That is the projected transport revenues we are estimating for the county. If you do exactly that, the 3.66845. So you're coming up roughly about 200,000 a year. You're not.
It's down 100,000 a year. That's what I'm.
No, the top line is the transport revenues. What's missing is that other revenues bucket, which we weren't even sure what that was on the 990s. So it's like interest and investments and some stuff that's out there.
Could be standbys and.
Yeah, things like that.
That revenue seems kind of low.
I also don't believe that.
That's net revenue?
Rates across the counties, right?
What's that?
That's probably just a big bucket with all the towns thrown in as revenue. But if you were gonna standardize the rates, I think you potentially could. Because, you know, you take a higher rate, and potentially make more.
To clarify that.
That's a change in operation from where we are today.
To clarify, that 3.66 is what we would estimate the optimized revenue to be available in the system at that 300% Medicare rate with a single biller. There's just not an overwhelming amount of calls, right? You're still a rural area. You don't have 20,000 transports or something. So the revenue is a limited piece of transport revenue.
When you say 300% of Medicare, so that's basically a catch-all number to catch private insurance, self-pay, and Medicare patients.
Right.
And that it's a blended rate.
Yeah, the 300% is what you set your charge master to. So that's what you would bill commercial insurance, private insurance, private pay. Now, you're not going to see those returns on some of those. Insurance might pay 80%. Medicare and Medicaid are locked in at their fee schedule. You got to make sure and charge above them or they'll take the lower rate. So it's really about capturing commercial insurance money when you do that, because that's about where the commercial insurance market will fall, around 250 to 300. So you want to make sure and capture as much of that as you can.
If I could jump back to.
Yeah.
665 revenue.
Yeah.
Coming per call. You don't tell us what the average cost per call is.
Because I don't know. I mean, I would have to take everybody's a little different, and so I don't know I don't have all that data to do that.
Right, because according to this, I know the town of Hunter loses money.
Yeah,
all the time. I'm
and,
just wondering how much money the rest of it.
A lot.
yeah, I can tell you,
We don't provide this service.
It's like you gotta know what to lose now in order to pick out what system. You know what I mean? Are you better off losing what you're losing now or go with one of these systems and lose?
well, we're estimating as a whole, you're losing 6.34 million. That's what we're estimating based off the data.
Yeah, I know.
As a whole.
Give us what's coming in as a revenue as a
Yeah.
county.
Right.
You should be able to give us what it costs for the county.
Yeah, it's at 6.345 million.
That,
Yeah, yeah, net.
net, it's costing $10 million
10 million and at 10.192.
with different pay scales. Some pay rent, some own their buildings, some fleets are different.
Some have full-time employees.
Thank you.
That's why I couldn't quantify the direct labor and material on that.
Part of the problem is we're so disjointed, there's no commonality, there's no. I mean, that's really gonna be to take this further, you're gonna have to do a phase 2 and phase 3 evaluation.
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
This is 30,000 feet.
yeah, this is high level. That's high level, right? Yes, sir.
Chad, in your experience, if the response time metrics to maintain that accreditation are reached, is there grant money or homeland security money or something that's available to help with additional funding to maintain that accreditation?
Yeah, there's, as a rural community, even the state of New York offers quite a bit of grant money. Like St. Lawrence County, they just got a bunch of grant money to do stuff. So there's funding options available. And a unified, that's the other thing a unified system can bring is some of that power to go after some of that funding, right? Because you'll have data, you'll have things you can go out and grab. So,
But that's grant money, it's not annual money.
right,
No, that's
right. No, the state isn't.
Your startup.
Right, it could be started, yeah.
A lot of radio money, grants are open, there's different grants for different categories of different things, right? So. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's usually, well, it's always, it's never the states or the Fed saying, yeah, we'll give you X amount a year, that's not happening.
Would it be possible for all the towns to give the county what they have to charge their local residents to cover the EMS and ALS services? And then compare to what?
We have the tax levies.
Yeah,
We have the tax levies.
Broken down as what's being used for their ambulance service?
Yes.
Is it greater than what there's?
No, what Ray?
Yeah, but you're reporting from towns, some of them include fuel, some include insurance, some don't. So I'm not sure that the numbers.
Some are districts,
are very
some are part of the
comparable.
tax, some are part of the town levy, right? So ours, we don't have an ambulance system. So that's just part of our town budget tax levy.
But you know what you have
We know.
from your levy.
100%.
So if we could have all that and compare it.
I think for,
They've got all
I thought it was broken down.
Ray did that.
Yeah, Ray did some of that work, so.
That's what that spreadsheet was an attempt. Whether or not it captures every expense, because sometimes employees are driving a highway truck and then they're driving an ambulance and we don't get a full picture of cost. But we did grab, what Ray grabbed was from the tax levy information that he has access to was what each levy, if it's like, there's 8 taxing jurisdictions for ambulatory care out of the 14 towns. Ray had that exact number for each of those 8.
So these agencies have what they bring in revenue. And then what's the difference to make their budget whole? And that's the number we need.
We have that.
That's the number we got.
What does it total?
Some agencies
A lot.
contract out to other towns.
So that's the difference.
Yeah, but you're right.
6 million.
So that makes a big
Option,
difference.
if you go back to the slide, the option 0. What I took out of
6.34.
everybody's budgets, whether it be a special district or whether it be in your own town budget and the county green EMS piece of the puzzle, I came up at 6,600,271. They came in with their numbers with the data reported to them at 6.345. That's pretty darn close.
Pretty close, yeah.
And so everything I projected in the spreadsheet that you're looking, that you have in your binders is all predicated, starting at option 0, right through options 1, 2, and 3.
And that includes the county's portion of the best.
Yes.
And keep in mind too, like, you're all really nice people, so like. Which is great, is great, except it's not great in the world of accounting, right? So you'll say, well, you know, the windshield wiper broke, well, just have Bob down at the garage there, throw a new one on there, don't worry about it, or, you know. Yeah, we need the heat, the furnace is out, oh, well, yeah, we'll just have, you know, and none of that cost is really accrued where it should be, because you're all nice people and you're doing what you need to do. And that's fine, but it certainly throws a little bit of a monkey in the wrench when it's time to crunch numbers. That's why we're saying in the future, when you're really trying to get down to data, it's okay to say, we need to take that and make sure we capture that expense. You're not being mean, you're just capturing the data, right? So, anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
You have to pay for everything out of fund. So you're paying it out of your ambulance.
There's no commingling.
Right,
Correct.
right.
So we can tell you exactly what we spent.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Which your wipers know.
right. So here's our conclusion, which basically we're saying here that ultimately option 3 is probably your most cost effective. You all should be applauded for the efforts. You're here tonight. It's beautiful outside. I'm sure there's other things you'd love to be doing, but you're here. So thank you for that. I know your citizens appreciate that. And if there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. We're here for them, so.
Chad?
Yeah.
If they adopt any of these options, will they have to start saying you all?
Maybe.
I'll start saying that even if we don't.
That's an Ohio thing. I also say oops a lot too, and some other things. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep, sure.
All righty, obviously, a ton of information there. I probably read this report 10 times and my head is still swimming. But kind of a follow-up to Sean's question earlier about total cost, and until we pick the option that we want, it's difficult to truly come up with an option. You know, these are, let's call it not generic options, but they're a series of, you know, coulda, shoulda, wouldas, or I think in my mind, what the most important factor for me, and it's, forgive me, it's not gonna be the money cost, it's gonna be the quality of the response, the response time as we look at our unique geography. You know, what is there, 2 roads at the mountaintop? And depending upon how cars are moving, if we're gonna have a unified system so that dispatch can control where they are, how does that affect response time? And if I've heard anything in the last 2 years, 3 years, response time is a phobia that we have here because we're so unique in the geography, although in 3,000 counties across the country, I don't think that issue is unique to us. It's just, we're rural. We don't have a hospital. If you're going to Kingston round trip, what is it? 3 hours if the emergency room is open? A vehicle is now offline. Oops, we gotta move. And I think some of these details that you can't get at 30,000 feet, we need to get into those weeds. That's why this evaluation is gonna take a long time. I hope it doesn't take forever. I think as was pointed out, I think some of our agencies are teetering. You got tax cap issues, recruitment and retention. And the quality of pay for employees has to be critical as well. This is a big task, and that's why the significance of your continued attendance is gonna be so important, because if you make the first meeting and you don't show up to the fifth, you're gonna miss a lot of detail. Yes, young man.
Part of the problem isn't just the ambulance service, it's the whole healthcare industry as a whole. But we're locking us out of hospitals and everything else. So you go to a hospital, and you can't get in there, you gotta find another one to go to. Sometimes they gotta go to the third one. So what,
Yeah,
you know,
That's
the
part of-
guys in the ambulance waiting for it.
that's gonna be part of our operational outline, is how do we deal with when the ERs begin to shut down?
Yeah, the state is so screwed up with a lot of this stuff, it isn't funny.
Well, although the state did just pass the ability for people now, well, they're developing the criteria for it, but that's the ability for agencies to transport to someplace other than a hospital as well. So you may take some of those patients that were clogging up an emergency room that maybe needed to go to a mental health clinic or just needed to go to an urgent care. That may,
Yeah, well, that's
Some of that back it
another
up.
problem, exactly.
they can test that. But I
Sean, go ahead.
Is your intent sort of this body of people to kind of get into the weeds every single time we meet?
It's not my intent, it's our intent.
Understood. So, but that's the intent.
Yes, the intent is this policy committee is gonna hammer out one alternative that somehow floats to the top. Maybe there's multiple. Then I think maybe we gotta do a roadshow and reach out to the community and say, here's the current situation, here's option A, here's option B, here's the one that the policy committee is making a recommendation for. But I think we can't do that without having the underlying data of response time, budgets. You know, the county-wide system would, I think, would be much more easier to be implemented if the state passes legislation to allow the county to pass a special district taxation level that encompasses the entire operation. Or if they give us the ability to create a special district and a certain town does not want to join, then they get carved out of the district. The county tax levy today cannot do that dissection. The county tax gets applied to all 658 acres. But if this legislation goes through, I can just cut somebody out. They are self-contained, they'd have their OCON, we'd have intermunicipal backups, and we go from there. That's a solution.
That doesn't exist yet.
That doesn't exist yet. And my sources in the second floor, there was a bill for that creation. It passed the Senate. It got held up in the Assembly. And it's my understanding through NISAC that what was the objection at the Assembly level is being hammered out. Hopefully, when the state legislature comes back in 25, we get it hammered out.
So if they do that, Sean, you can carve that out.
I can carve anybody out.
Right, so say Catskills with Athens and they have their own.
If they want to choose that,
But. So when their ambulances are exhausted. And I don't want to have anybody left out. What happens if we have to go into Catskill or Athens?
we bill.
So we bill.
Right.
And that's.
Right, so the intermunicipal agreement on those communities that choose to say independent would have to include an agreement that when we get called for backup, since you're not paying into the greater system,
You have the ability to back up.
you have the ability to invoice.
Well, either way.
And they agree that they would sign off saying we agree to pay so much for all or whatever.
That's the theory, yeah. Patrick, I'm sorry, were you saying?
No, I was agreeing, yeah.
Okay.
We have to have some kind of interviews.
Rich?
Yeah, the question I had is, so the way the rule is right now, hypothetically, if we all jumped in the pool 6 months down the road, the issue with this taxation thing is basically because Halkett, in theory, I'm just saying everybody's in now. So the way it's set up now, Halkett could not be cut out.
Today, no. The county actually reimburses Alcott for the levy that they attach to their service. if this legislation goes through, I just cut out Hellcat. They would not be a member, because you can't get there from here, right? So. So they have to be out. That there's no way we can really take care of them. They can't.
I just wondered about the tax as far as.
Yeah, I can cut anybody out. Yeah, let me, the caveat to that is, depending upon how many people want to remain independent, I'm gonna presume that there has to be, I can't have like an island surrounded by nothing, that there's gotta be some continuity or contiguousness to the geography. Let me pick on somebody. Cooksaki wants out. Okay, that's a very easy way to cut Cooksaki out. Carroll wants out. Ooh, then I got a donut hole. I don't know. So my theory though is that the special district boundaries can be determined by us. Sean?
So this might be a question for Ray. So let's say we're able to do that. How does equalization rate work in the formula for taxation? Because when I looked at the appendix, right, it's a blended rate, right? It's sort of a blended rate of, this is how much the town tax levy is gonna go down, and this is how much the county tax levy is gonna go up. So how does equalization, just in a general sense, play a role into determining how each town is going to pay their portion of the levy?
Just as it does with the county levy. So equalization rate, you bring everybody to full market value and establish a rate. So you bring all assessed values to an equalized full market value. And from there, you create what the apportionment is by value. And from there, you backdoor into a tax rate by the town, and you also have a consistent full value tax rate. So in the spreadsheet that you're looking at for me, the county system was done using a full value tax rate.
At 100% equalization.
Well, no, I brought everybody to a full value tax. I brought them to a full value and calculated a tax rate. The towns, we use their own equalization rate. Well, we don't have to use, we have their levy amount, and that's the value. In order to make things consistent and easy for you to understand, I converted that into a full value tax rate also. It's essentially the same, so. It took 34 spreadsheets.
I get that. But
I guess, let me be more blunt. Ray, the lower the town EQ rate is, does that mean the higher the bill will be for that town?
Necessarily.
Okay. No, that's a no. Although I encourage you all to reval.
Because assessed, yes, I would love you to. Assessed value, so attributable to how a levy distributes year over year is attributable to not only the equalization rate, which is just a definition of what your market is doing within your municipality. Okay, that's what the market is doing. It's actually a year out of date, but let's ignore that. Then you also have equalization changes, not dealing with the EAT rate. So you have people that are buying a home and it may have a minor modification to it, and so the value of it went up. So the AV went up, the assessed valuation went up. You could also have physical changes to your assessment roll. A brand new hotel gets built, so you added, $6 million to your roll. Those are physical changes capturing your AV rate, and naturally 14 jurisdictions have differences going on, not only in the market, you have differences going in what's being built, what's being added and subtracted from your assessed values.
I guess
some are growing faster.
What, we have a very low equalization rate, as I'm sure you know. If we're all gonna go into this, we just have to make sure, I'm trying to understand, sort of confirm that it will still be equitable until we get such a time as we can equalize at 100%.
right?
It's gonna be as equitable as it can by establishing, using the equalization rates determined by your local assessor and the state.
Right.
We will equalize it to a full value rate and then redistribute that levy based upon that.
All right, we are zooming. I do have a chat questions. Kevin, if you'd,
Yep, this might be more for Chad. Does the labor cost number take in account for the current and or future overtime component?
I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but I'll give it my best shot. So the systems we designed, option 2 and 3, are 12-hour shifts that include overtime that's scheduled with, I would say, some significant pay increases.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best way I can answer that.
generically, let me be personal. I think any solution that we're gonna create here has to include efforts on retention and recruitment, which means the pay scales are gonna have to go up.
And
By what number, I can't tell you. I'm sorry, Pat?
patient care needs to be the number one concern, not so much, not that response time isn't a concern, but patient care needs to be the number one concern.
We shouldn't compete with Walmart.
But the systems, the options we put forward are very competitive. Labor wise.
Yeah, we did a market valuation of what pay rates are around. Dolph, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do, sure. Back in 2016, we did this, really came up with one option, countywide or not. What happened is, as it fell apart, not everybody in the county wanted to participate in it. So I don't know how that would work out. Like you said, it's possible to carve it out through legislation, but if not everybody in the county is in on this, then we could have fractured portions. Towns not wanting to opt into the program.
If there's an Achilles heel here tonight,
Well, wasn't the study in 2016 only for paramedic, not transportation, not?
No.
it was ABLS. Yeah.
Well, basically, when you do this, you're gonna end up being all ALS.
Well, that's a good question.
If that's an option that we choose.
The issue.
If you don't have fly cars, you're gonna have to have ALS ambulance.
Well, good question. So is it better to maintain the fly cars with the A's like we do today, and then have the transport second? Or do we put a paramedic in every transport vehicle, and then that paramedic then takes a ride to the hospital thereafter?
All three districts have to be the same.
Continuity would be imperative. I wouldn't want to have.
It almost seems like you would be better off with having fly cars and the BLS ambulance. If they need to go, they can go to the hospital. If they don't, they can go back on.
Again, a good point. So that, does the fly car allow us to stabilize the patient? Especially with some of the new legislation that was passed. And then we transfer them to the transport vehicle. They get back in their fly car for their next. And is that part of the solution that addresses the response time concern of the geography differences of the county? Because if we can get there in 10 minutes, what we're gonna transport after that, is that the patient care success that Pat just referenced? That could be a solution, and that could still get done countywide, or it could get done geographically, but I think geographically, you're gonna have more overhead expenses. You're gonna have. There's no economies of scale there.
It could cost a little more, but on the other hand, I think you get a better product.
In many instances.
I mean, those guys that get there right away quick, I mean, that's imperative.
Yeah. They're your first responder in most cases. They're first, paramedic, flight cars.
They stabilize.
First one on the scene.
Yep.
I don't know if you really want to give that away.
Well, and I'll throw my 2 cents in just because that's what I do.
That's what we pay you for.
So that option 2, really, those supervisors really are fly cars, right? So you would have one fly car in every district. But in the grand scheme of things, the staff apply car at certain peak times. When you know the system is busy, if that gave the community a better feeling towards response times and first response, that expense is not high. But it is more than obviously running an all ALS ambulance. So it all comes back to that amount of readiness you want to purchase that you think makes sense.
But I mean, if you've got an ambulance somewhere else in the county that has to go to it, you can get a fly car there to stabilize the patient and get things ready.
Sure.
Then the ambulance shows up and transports it.
Ideally, in the county system too, the dispatch center is gonna try to manage the
Yeah,
system.
well,
as a
then have
whole.
There
everybody.
you go. Move the cars around.
Yeah. So, but you know, throwing a fly car on during peak times, if it makes sense, that's not a huge expense. Yes. I wouldn't make that a deal breaker for sure, you know.
Sean, do you have a question before you raise your hand?
I was just gonna reiterate, Chad took care of most of
Okay.
the reminding that it's.
Larry?
So in other states and other places, what happens when you have a jail? We have the correctional facility.
I mean, a prison.
We're constantly going there, and it's owned by the state.
Yeah.
So in other states, are they responsible for going through these?
Yeah, I personally have felt that pain running a system that had a jail, a state jail.
Prison.
Prison.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the place I never want to be. I know that. So, the only way to tackle that is through a lot of communication and pre-planned protocols. And honestly, it took me getting my state representative involved and making it a problem for the board. Otherwise, it's hard because the goal of the prison is not the goal of the ambulance service, right?
Yes, but like our prison is equipped, I mean, it's a medically equipped place that most times can do a better job taking care of their people on their own rather than send them
Right.
to an emergency room where they gotta wait and tie up our people.
Yeah. It really.
When you say medical and Coxsackie Correctional, it's basically a nursing home. They're not, they don't treat emergency. They can treat the band-aids, but they're not treating anybody that's critically ill, as in like a hospital.
They don't have that set up,
No, it's basically.
No.
It's geriatric care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they have.
At the prison?
changes.
They're inmates with only.
They're having.
Long-term care.
They just
Months.
start in the hospital that still need care as in like a nursing home. But they can't treat, can't treat chest pains, respiratory, all that.
Right.
no, I was like.
No, I mean, a lot
I
of.
was told that they had state of the art, almost like
They have like a doc in a box. But they don't, and when I mean a doc in the box, they have like telematics that will speak to a physician
so they have.
somewhere else,
They
but
have
a lot of
facilities,
times.
they don't use it.
I think the whole thing is screwed up. The state should supply an OD ambulance for the prison.
It's a regional medical unit, and they can do a lot of very basic things, but they don't handle stroke seizures.
Assaults, stitches or stuff like that.
They don't handle everything they have.
Daryl, I think the key is, we gotta go to the state, lobby for increases of the fee structure.
That's the biggest thing.
That's the only
You know,
possible solution really is, they're archaic in their returns.
Yeah.
But the greater point though is the uniqueness of having the prisons in Coxsackie, as well as the nursing homes in Catskill. Those unique things and calls for service are gonna have to be addressed. And that's why I mentioned, is the continuation of the fly car stabilization transport later something that we gotta, hammer out. And I'm not the expert, okay, trust me, don't, you guys are.
And the reimbursement for those ambulance rides to Albany Med. Because traditionally, Coxsackie worked for corrections for 27 years. Coxsackie, Greene, they're all part of the Great Meadow Hub. Now that they're closing Great Meadow down in November, I don't know if they're gonna still call it the Great Meadow Hub, but they have a contract, the Great Meadow Hub with Docs has a contract with Albany Med. So most all of those ambulance rides are to Albany Med, and the reimbursement probably 10 years ago was around $255 they can't put the diesel fuel in the ambulance up and back for that kind of money. So something has to change on that on the state level as far as reimbursing. And I know they've tried for years and years and years. What's that?
Has recently done a
Yeah.
lot of work with the prison to increase the fees.
Yeah, and Cooksaki has a regional medical unit with clinics Monday through Friday where they bring doctors in to see mass numbers of inmates from the hub. Specialty clinics, and then they have long-term care, but they do not have a doctor on 24/7 there. The doctor generally is there from like 6 to 2 or 6 to 2 or 8 to 4 during the day shift, Monday through Friday. He's on call, but they don't have a doctor there 24/7.
I was telling that as the doc in the box analogy was.
Yeah.
All right, look, it's getting kind of, yes.
Just a question for Fitch, and it's something that I don't see in the report as one of the recommendations, but something that kind of goes through my head. What about augmenting a system that we have in place with an additional transporting ambulance that can float around the county? Is that something that was looked at or considered or should be considered or no?
Well, so you're talking about like a safety net option, basically.
Yeah, and similarly, Albany County, which is just to the north of us, does a similar thing where their sheriff's department runs and I don't want our sheriff's department to do this, but they have two ambulances, I believe, that kind of roam the county, and when a call goes into second or third tones, they'll say, hey, head this direction.
Yeah, so it's somewhat similar to what we did in Wayne County, because a lot of the agencies in Wayne County did not want to combine to a county service, but the county decided to institute what Rick House called a safety net principle. So they started a county EMS service and positioned units around the county to ensure that there was a minimum response time met of 15 minutes. Some of the towns said, we're out, you can just do ours. And so like the town alliance is run by Wayne County EMS now, and the town of Sodus. So, but other towns still maintain their ambulance, but the county's still positioning ambulances around to maintain that safety net. You can certainly do that. It's expensive, because what you're doing is you're ultimately pulling revenue from the existing agencies through municipal CON. You have a limited amount of revenue, right? So the more you dice it, the tougher it gets for everyone. And so it will really eventually
Doesn't improve the service.
Well,
it does.
It improves the response time.
Right.
But you have the individual issues of pay, retention, benefits, training disjointed by the number of agencies that we have.
The whole funnel. So where that safety net comes into play is when it's clear and imminent that there's gonna be a lot of agencies failing. And you wanna get ahead of that.
Well, that's one of the things you said in the beginning.
Right.
One of you said in the beginning.
So now,
It happened within a year.
if as a whole, as a county, you can come together and find a much more coordinated solution together, that's the best way to go. And that's why we recommended what we recommended. Now, there's other options you can go for, but they're problematic. But it's a good thought, you know.
One footnote I wanted to make for those of you who have regular contact with state reps. In the back of the section of reports is a summation of the existing bills that are being considered. Two of them, as you may know, have been approved by the governor. That one of them being the ability to carry whole blood in the ambulance, and I think the other one had to do with invoicing, but those are the things that are on there possibly coming up. And one of those is inclusive of the taxing jurisdiction ability if it goes through. Thomas?
Sean, when we walk on, if you put dates.
Yeah, I was just gonna go there, because we're kind of getting to a bewitching hour here of 2 hours, and I don't want to keep you up anymore. So again, going back to that tab of the proposed, this is on the first tab. Again, these are just dates that we checked for the availability of this room. I'd like to know if that November 13, I didn't want to get too close to the holiday. If that works for everybody.
I will be away at a conference on the 13th.
Can you send somebody?
I can, if that makes it work.
What's that?
I can, if that keeps it.
I would, if nothing else, you guys can communicate post meeting.
I won't be here.
I think they moved it upstairs. John? Yes. Yeah, I believe anything that was scheduled here went upstairs. I'm not gonna shoot for the whole enchilada of all 6 meetings, but can I at least confirm that with the exception of those 2 that just spoke up, that everybody can be here on the next scheduled date? All right,
It's a Wednesday, right?
yes.
Yes, okay.
Secondly to that, anybody who was here in the back that wants a binder, please come to us afterwards and we'll create a binder and then give you the binder when you get here next. I want everybody to have the same documentation, the same common understanding of all the issues. And then every month, when you come back, we're gonna be giving you a synopsis of the minutes that for this meeting, next month's agenda, and we'll continually stuff that. That's why I picked a large binder, because I'm convinced at the end of 6 meetings, I'll be handed out a second binder. All right, does anybody have a last issue? My last issue is to those people who are staff members. Please don't fear this debate. We will listen to you. But I don't want you thinking that you're gonna be just told and that you don't have contribution. You have contribution. And at an appropriate time, if we need to have a meeting with members of staff, we will do so. When Fitz originally came out, we spent just about a whole week traveling the county. I think we got to every town, every house. We did talk to various members of the staff who were on duty at that time anyways. Much of what I want to accomplish here is for the benefit of the employees, absolutely. So I don't want anybody having the fear that you're not going to be listened to or you're going to be screwed. That's not the intent whatsoever. If anything, I want you to come out of this better. Last call? Wish it was actually, but I digress. All right, I'll see you in a month.